Hey, folks.
Hey,
Hello.
Howdy, howdy.
Okay, I think most of us, or some of us were in the previous meeting, but let's go ahead and I copied the agenda in. Just go ahead and turn your name in the attendee list. Mark it if you're here. Typically, do you get started like a couple of minutes, Crow, or just? I guess we can get started. I know that Jay is probably going to jump in soon.
People tend to be a couple minutes late, so I always just kind of hang out till around now to get started.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it'd be good to see if there's any new friends that didn't join. We've just had one meeting at the end of last year, so if there's anyone who's not there, feel free to introduce yourself. Yeah.
I'm going to meet Yesenia's friend.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's good.
one of the three.
Written in the same form. It's a little bit cheeky, but.
And I have to apologize, guys. So I have a mandatory training at the same. I did not want to, as a first meeting. I was going to keep this, but I got a 3-hour mandatory training. I'm in at the same damn time. So if you see me look off to well, yeah, it'll be the left in this too. You see me look off to the left, it's because I got to look at the other camera, and then look back at this one, and then look at the other one. That wouldn't be the first time I've had to do this. Crow understands very well. I think Crow does the same thing. This ain't the first time. You know, that's just life.
Don't strain that neck though.
Thank you all for joining. Christine, you're gonna have to do the heavy lifting on this one today.
That's fine. You're with us in spirit and in half mode. That works. All right. If we don't have any new friends, is anyone willing to help with scribing for today's meeting? Yeah, thanks, Abhishek. All right. Go ahead and drop any opens that you have below. Basically just have one in there. We've got also a couple of opens in there, but we wanted to use this time, even though we've just had one meeting that we kind of had last year. This is almost like the official kickoff for this actually committee terms of reference. That's one of the open items, but we want to just kind of like level set, and as we move forward, trying to figure out what it is that we want to do as part of this subcommittee. And also we can also review what we discussed at the end of 2022 and see what items we actually want to go ahead and tackle. And also give context to anyone who may not have attended that previous meeting as well. Sound good? All right, so as we kind of got into the end of last year, there was an education SIG that's part of the OpenSSF that was formed, and it was part of like the work stream that came out of a White House meeting. And there was a plan being put in place that was going to like accompany that. It was going to basically try to look for funding for some of the initiatives that we wanted to do. And as part of that, Jay and I had also been chatting, and we wanted to see if we could tackle some of the aspects that were going to be in that education plan that were related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thanks for dropping that link in the chat. And that's kind of where it started off, is like, what is it that we can focus on to kind of go into those items and put that into the plan. And so that's basically what formed the context of seeing if we could just focus in a subcommittee to address those items, but also think about anything else or gaps that we might be missing that we don't know about. And so what came out of the initial meeting that is actually in the agenda notes was we talked about what are some of the things, what are some of the existing Linux Foundation initiatives out there? What can we leverage? What are some of the outcomes that we want to see in terms of like engaging with some of like the underrepresented or institutions that are like addressing underrepresented minorities? And what are some of like the existing partnerships that are in place that can actually aid in that? And we started looking at what are the gaps. We looked at mentorship was brought up as one of the things that we probably needed to focus on. And then also things like role models, what are the audiences we want to like target? You can actually look at the agenda meeting notes to go into that. One of the partnerships that kind of was brought up with Major League Hacking with Max is representing as what are some of like the programs that they have available that could actually address some of these different gaps. And then we put together kind of like a quick list of things that we would potentially want to work on, and with the goal of trying to see how we could see these into the education plan that was going to be kind of like buttoned up and then presented in front of like the technical advisory committee that Crow was actually putting together. So there were a couple of action items that came out of the initial meeting. One was to see what are the list of the gaps and drop that into a comment that was then going to potentially fold into the plan. And then the other action item, I think Yesenia was going to go off and look at what are some of the existing Linux Foundation initiatives. And so that's how we ended that year. And then hopefully everyone went on the holidays, and now we have to like remember what we did and level set for 2023. So that's where we are today. And if there's anything I missed, go ahead, jump in.
I'm not sure if this was mentioned. Let me turn my sound down on my other computer. I didn't realize I still had the sound up this damn high. One of the other things I wanted to think about as well, or I think would be good for this group, is to see find the parallels between our what our objectives are here and how it aligns to the broader OpenSSF and then the even higher level LF, right? What's the OpenSSF thinking about doing DE&I wise, and then what's the LF thinking about doing DE&I wise? Because a lot of what we do here could potentially help kill a few birds with one stone, right? We have no idea how what we do affects or what the effect of, or what the ripple is, right? The butterfly effect across the board. But how exciting would it be for some of the stuff that we do could have to have that kind of expansion, that kind of broad view, so where it expands out further, the tentacles reach out, and now we're touching on different things. And who knows, maybe what we start here could be blown up into something a greater across the board. So those are some of the thoughts we could potentially have as well, right? Get creative. Let's get creative. If for no other reason except we have the forum to do it. I mean, that's pretty much it. That's my 2 cents add.
So from my action item to touch base with LF to see what has been worked on, mostly just with the Hyperledger group, Daniela and Hart. They've been working with the academics. I shared the links under the meeting notes where they've been driving that. That's essentially the only thing from an academic university standpoint. They also mentioned the CNCF mentoring, but they had noted after a conversation with them that 2 gaps that need to be filled that they've seen in this like engagement is like an LF-wide academic engagement. Like, how do folks in the universities reach out to LF to get support? I know there's sites and stuff like that, but maybe broadening the marketing and communications to them, and then giving them more of an overview of like, this is what your ROI for participating with us, and then also the communication between maintainers and researchers, whether they're academic or they're just everyday researchers, and kind of creating like a pipeline process, creating that community for them. That those are 2 gaps that we can essentially start targeting to fill.
Okay. Yes, so I kind of see like a pattern between like there's some targeted or focused work that's going on in one committee or one group or organization, and there's like a need. Yeah, there's a need to try to do something LF wide. Okay. Okay, so similar to what Jay was actually talking about. So some of the things that it's almost like we start thinking about that way, but what are some like the tentacles that we can think across? Okay. Any other thoughts about like what I might have missed from like last time as well?
I think it's a really good summary, Christian. I couldn't remember that much from last year, so yeah, I appreciate it. I think one of the like, I guess like framings that we used that I thought was pretty helpful, that I think Emily actually brought up was, the training and education aspect's great, but we need to think about what happens before that, right? So the reach and the advocacy and the almost like demand generation, right? To get representative adoption of the training, rather than it being the same old characters and becoming like another thing that people have to do to launch careers in security. And then I think we talked a bit about how to make the training itself inclusive, and that is all about like accessibility and neurodiversity and all those angles. And then there's what happens after the training. So how do I get from educated and trained to employable and work experience and knowing where to apply and how to apply and into my first job and internship and all of that kind of stuff. So I thought that was a really useful way of thinking about it, like the reach bit of getting people into the training, making the training inclusive and accessible by everyone, and then thinking about what happens afterwards. And if all of that gets stitched together, then we've got the opportunity, I think, to go far ahead of many of the other areas of the Linux Foundation. Truly with there's initiatives around like diversity in software development and in what's the other big track, the Hardware Alliance, but they're not thinking about this kind of end-to-end as we were discussing. So I think that's what's really exciting, right? Like getting outside and beyond like a training program and thinking about reaching people and building careers. Because I think that's what moves the needle, as I think we've probably all seen.
Yeah, well said. I couldn't agree more. It's more like the end to end. And yeah, if you just build like a really good training program, but you don't have anyone who you want to be in that training program, or you don't really look at what it is of the obstacles to participating, then you're doing a disservice to it. Okay. Yeah, and I think for each one of those things, as we look into them, it's going to be like, what are the partnerships? Who's actually strong in those areas? Where are the industry partnerships? Another thing that I did not mention, there was also like talk about how do we involve some of like the leading folks who are like the participants of OpenSSF. How do we include them in actually putting some skin in the game? Actually, just like basically like putting up their hands and saying we will support this. So that was also another thing that I remember was mentioned. All right. All right, so that's kind of like a good sort of like level setting, but it would be interesting to actually, and we probably touched on this in different areas, but as we kind of look towards 2023, but also in general, what are like some of the things that we want to actually specifically go into, what are like some of like the items that we would want to like tackle that specifically? That's kind of like what I wanted to get into next. And yeah, Crow.
I think a quick win that we could achieve, I put a link in the opens. The Linux Foundation hosts a variety of different conferences. And I think we very quickly could put together some type of targeted presentation to our topic here and try to reach out to the existing conference participants. First off, to try to make people aware of what resources are available, but also start to solicit them for what's your feedback? How can we make the pipeline easier and help people get onboarded? What types of activities would you like to see post training? I loved the idea. I can't recall the young lady who was talking about it in the first call, but she was talking about the need to have digital portfolios for these job applicants and this mentorship. So we could actually do kind of a birds of a feather type thing and engage with the conference participants there to say, how can we get information from you, but also start to solicit your participation in these efforts, because we have a great group of folks here and we had a good cook group the first call, but I'd like to see 50 people on this call in the future, people passionate and interested in participating in this topic.
Okay, all right. So tackling the conferences and seeing if we could just like hear from the folks and what exactly they want to see.
And even if it's just as simple as a birds of a feather thing, like, hey, we're here to talk about education topics related to DE&I.
Yeah.
Who's interested in coming to talk with us? And maybe we'll get some maintainers or some other corporate people that to try to get solicit their opinion and their participation. Like Intel sponsors a large series of internships every year. So what's to say I can't go ask my corporate overlords, hey, could we carve off some of these with a specific focus around AppSec and around underserved communities?
Yeah. I really like that, because it could just be like, I've been to a couple of, I don't know if Jay was saying something or is in the other training. Ignore him. Okay. Yeah, because I was thinking that could be like little, like if they had like a package at certain conferences potentially have time for this type of topic, and this is how, just make sure it's there. I think that's a great idea. And then somehow make that a feeder into where we could gather that input. Yeah. Okay. That's a good one. What are some of like the upcoming conferences that you are aware of? You mentioned a few.
Well, the Linux Foundation is going to do the open source summits. They'll do 3 of those a year.
Yeah.
You're going to have things like the LF member summit. You'll have other kind of non things like plumbers or Usenix. There's a lot, and then there's a bunch of cloud native. The CNCF does a bunch of conferences as well. So we potentially could hop on any number of those and kind of take our our petition that we're looking to improve this area. We're looking for people. We're looking for feedback on how we can do it, and participants on how we can start to work on some of these topics, and solicit people that are interested in doing mentorship, that are
Yeah.
interested in being able to help curate and develop those digital portfolios, for example.
That's a
I'm
good
not a
point.
developer, but I'd be glad to help out however I can. And we talked about interviewing and resume helping. There's a lot of different aspects to help build up that for these young people's resumes and their ability to be able to become active participants in our community.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that.
Another approach we can take. Go ahead, Max.
No, you go.
Thank you. Another approach you can take is a few of the diversity inclusion groups. So, like I know Women in Cybersecurity, they host a conference in March. You have this one's always hard for me. She Security that happens in December. You have Grace Hopper. You have a few of those. Afrotech is another one that they usually host in Austin, more around the Haitian community. So we can probably participate with a lot of these like community groups and have talks about this topic. And same thing as Grove was saying, is kind of just getting survey and feedback, like how do we make this process easier for you through these different avenues that are already getting people that are like handling the mentoring, handling the interviewing, handling the soft skills, and we kind of provide that avenue for the digital portfolio, which I had shared on the Slack last year on some documents that I wrote of like strategies of how I build out my digital portfolio.
Yeah.
So those are things that we can also leverage, I think, as far as the community. And we can invite members from there. We can probably reach out to these different groups and be like, hey, we're having these conversations, come join us. These are the talks. This is how you become aware and participant. Because that's something I don't see in the Linux Foundation is, we see it kind of very, very, very light, but folks from these different organizations, I don't see them in these calls across the board.
Yeah, I like that a lot, man. I mean, like there's like other organizations, like if I remember correctly, Girls That Code, I can't remember if that's one, Code 2040. There's a whole bunch of organizations like that they would be phenomenal to have on these calls. I have a contact that used to do a lot of work with Code 2040. I'm curious to see if they still do that work. I'll reach out to them, and if I can, see if I can't get them on this call. That would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah, I have a few with Haitians, Latinas in cyber, some of the women in tech and women in cybersecurity, so I can send out.
Why don't we put one together, Nicole, if you want to take that as an action item, some of these names that we're throwing out here, get a good list started. Like, so Code 2040, Girls That Code, I think Jasenia mentioned a few others. We can get a good list going and maybe take an action item on those of us that know of these organizations to reach out to them. But maybe if you want to put that list together, Nicole, that would be great.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, and I have some things from like previous job I had. I just have to like remember it from my mind what it is. Max, you had something you wanted to chime in?
Yeah, I love the idea of putting something together at the conferences, and I think the open source summits are particularly good because they're very like cross-functional, right? They have the OpenSSF track and the Hyperledger track and all that stuff, so they're a great bringer together of all those different people. I think we'll be able to get a lot of sponsors. I put an open around kind of like discuss the terms of reference for this committee, and I know that's I don't know, maybe an old-fashioned and overly formal like way of putting it, but I do think it's useful to think about like what gap we're trying to fill, and like if we look back, say this time next year, what success would look like in terms of the outcomes that we want to achieve. For example, I'm conscious that we're all focusing in on what I would call like the next generation topic, and I think there's consensus generally that is how you really deliver like step change, for all angles of DE and I. But I think we should probably, write that down. We aren't thinking about training people who are like mid-career working for an insurance company or whatever. We're thinking about the next generation and getting people from college and non-college backgrounds from this list of groups more represented in, in AppSec. And if we could find anything about what representation currently is, in AppSec, and I am pretty sure that security is even poorer represented than technology as a whole. Right, and there's lots of nodding, right? We feel it, we know it. But I think it would be great for us to have like, a few stats that explain where we're focused there, and have some initiatives that we would look for other companies and individuals to join and sponsor. And maybe, the May Open Source Summit is a good target date to have some of that like solidified in some way. I also think there's a huge opportunity to access like the OpenSSF kind of pot of money and initiatives to drive this. We could set some aggressive target, like the majority of people who complete the foundational training are from underrepresented groups.
Mhm.
And we could work out what kind of investment and activities we'd require from OpenSSF to combine this with the education piece. Sorry, I'm kind of going off, but yeah, I think we're all in agreement and like inherently know that this is the right direction, but it's maybe a couple of steps for somebody who might be looking at this from the outside.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that, because one of the things that we want to do is, at least when we was chatting with Jay last week, is we wanted to bias towards action. We do want to get something done. So I like the aggressive timelines, only if just kind of gets you going. You just like, so yeah. So even last year, actually at Open Source Summit in Austin, that's where Jay and I actually started talking about these types of topics, and we actually put a marker mentally without knowing how it was going to be. At the next Open Source Summit, what could we show in terms of DE&I? So I agree with you, Max. Let's see what we can do.
Amazing. And I mean, I'm a huge fan of bias towards action, and I think there might even be something where we could plan like a proof of concept to get funded by OpenSSF that we then roll out and market to other groups and potential sponsors as we go forward.
Yeah. So does that look like then, because I had heard about like Alpha Omega project was doing something that was targeted towards diversity. Does that look like working with them and seeing what types of activities that they're working towards and getting that goal in that plan?
One of the things I wanted to do was leverage some of the communities to help, considering we're a 4-2-4 man team. Depends on the week and travel plans.
Mhm.
So definitely that, and then to kind of drive more towards the university and kind of build up that little pipeline where we could hand off some vulnerabilities that we found and kind of streamline that to make it easier. But I think working with these different groups and getting that funnel in of contributors and maintainers to help them kind of support their growth, I think it'll have a larger impact to all the OpenSSF rather than just Alpha Omega, because now we can get more contributors to, SIG Store or best practices or whatever.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not TLDR. It's I think it's in line.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think that's a really great like ground for the like mentorship and the portfolio building and the like application of learnings post training. I do wonder whether the like reach angle and getting people inspired and excited and motivated to even come along and get through all the training before they even get into like the you know, portfolio building and applying their skills angle might be the place we want to focus, you know, in the first half of this year. It's just a thought, but without that pipeline and like excitement, we might end up putting together, you know, some great plans around how folks can, you know, go and apply their skills and work with some of the, you know, most prestigious projects, you know, out there, and then we end up with like, you know, one applicant for 100 places or whatever, in like a mentoring scheme. That would be a really disappointing outcome. So, yeah, again, just a thought on like sequencing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good point.
Is there a way, I know last time at the last meeting, there was a discussion about the soft engineering skills. Is there a way to kind of work and target some of that in as we're looking at going forward, making things more inclusive? Because I think part of the overall goal when you do diversity and inclusion is to make sure people are broadly aware of who could have the skill set, right? It's not just particular groups of people from said school, right? We're trying to make sure that people know that these skills are all over the place, right? So if we're doing some of the soft skill stuff, like I believe one example brought up last time is, let's say like how to use GitHub and just knowing how to set some of these things up. Is it possible with some of the portfolio stuff that we integrate in there and show that people who are working in this program have these soft skills? Because I do think that's some of the things that's going to jump up if we're talking about gearing people towards getting jobs. So I don't really know how that all goes together neatly, but I do think that's a factor that was brought up last time that definitely should be integrated.
Agreed.
Yeah, for sure. I've learned the hard way that setting an ambition to teach people a broad set of software engineering skills becomes very, very challenging. But saying there are people graduating from, you know, boot camp, self-taught, you know, 2-year degree programs, 4-year degree programs who can all code, and these are the 5 things they're missing to be able to land a job as a junior application security engineer, is where you can really, really win. Like working out what are those key things, right? Like using Git and GitHub, understanding, you know, threat vulnerability analysis and secure coding best practices in DevSecOps. Like, you know, the more we compare it back to the consistent gaps, things that people aren't learning in you know, in their college courses and in boot camps, wherever it is, that also employers are looking for people to come into these kinds of roles, can be hugely powerful. I think you're saying the same thing, Nicole.
Yes, we're in agreement.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that, but I think we can also leverage, because a lot of the communities, they work on the soft skills, but I like the idea of kind of like an assessment. Like these are your top 5 skills missing for your next dream job. So software engineer or whatever, kind of giving them that guidance and be like, hey, these are the different community groups that you can probably learn it from, or these are the gaps that we see in the community groups, and here's, you know, our sources too. I think just giving folks the guidance and then the resources, has been mentioned, I think is a good path.
Yeah. I really like that, because it seems like it's something that's very like structured and organized. So you start off with saying, okay, this is where you potentially want to be, the skill set, this career, and this is what you this is kind of like auditing where you are, and this is how we're going to help you get where you are, whether it's like the resources and it's the mentorship, and we kind of come along with you along the path and make it very attainable, and we can potentially like do that in the at least for like 2023, see we can do like a proof of concept, and it seems a little bit more bound. I can see it. Yeah. Any other thoughts around some of that? I'm kind of seeing a plan kind of take shape. It's still like a bunch of different places, but I see something that we could potentially like reach towards.
Should we pilot with maybe 1 or 2 universities?
Yeah, I would believe so. Or 1 or 2 universities, 1 or 2 kind of like, so there's a couple of things, 1 or 2 universities, and then maybe 1 or 2 career positions, or whatever it is that we find. And I'm not sure, do we first listen and see what people need, or because it's always hard to just come in jumping and saying we've got the solution without actually hearing what people want. But I believe we could start with 1 or 2 universities and do a couple of like listening sessions, see some of like the gaps, and then see some of the ways that we could potentially help within like the certain deadlines of what we want. What can we do by some of these? And I think another thing that could be pretty exciting even as we work with some of these universities, I would like to start even seeing some of the folks who come out of these programs also be the ones who potentially go and speak and teach and become like the next level mentors as well. All right, so I guess the next thing is probably just thinking about what are some like potential universities. And I think with some of these universities, some of the experiences that I think we may have had with some of them is that there's relationships that get built with the university that you talk to. And that could also be what you call it, like something that could take a little longer to do. Like, what are the relationships that you would need to develop to kind of get them up and running? Because a lot of companies or a lot of organizations may come into some typical universities with a plan, but if they don't feel like there's going to be consistency and there's going to be some outcome, then you may kind of lose the interest to get your programs going. So those are some of the obstacles that I think we've seen. At least Jen and I were chatting about that as well.
As a way to I mean, and we can start thinking about this as we get closer to the end of the call. But let's do a quick level set too, just to shorten our shot group on exactly. Let's get that 3 to 5 bullets of what exactly we want to accomplish. And I want to say maybe 3 to 5 30, 3 to 5 60, and then 3 to 5 90 day. Now that, I mean, that 30, 60, 90, that came from the military. Hell, it could be 60, 90, 120. It could be 90, 120, 180, right? It could be anything like that. But 3 to 5 bullets of what we want to accomplish, or that the all over umbrella of this is what this working group is going to be dedicated to. Now, what are the tasks underneath that we want to target to make that a reality, right? And then build some stuff off of that.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I see in sort of like the long term of the 180 or the 90, however you pass it, is having a proof of concept that has been done, and we've kind of got at least the first cut of data from that. But that would not probably fit into a 90-day, that would fit into a longer term. So maybe I got the dates wrong, but that would be like one of the end results.
Yeah, so 90 would be mid-April.
Yeah. Mid-April
Not
would
sure.
be good if we wanted to do something to kind of present at, say, Open Source Summit North America, which is happening in May. So if we had like a target for doing something for that time frame, that 90-day would be a target for that.
I think the call for proposals ends on the 6th of February, if I remember right.
Yes.
7th of February.
Oh, 7th. 5th?
So that would be 30 days.
February 5th.
There we go, February 5th. I'm saying my dates the wrong way around as well. Yeah. No, I'm putting together another talk for it. So yeah, I think you can make them fairly high level, and then putting together the actual details of that, you could do over the time in between.
Yeah, so 2 weeks from now would be around the 31st. So we could already think about crafting something, even though it's not in that time frame, crafting something that could be a CFP for Open Source North America, and start thinking about that for the next meeting.
That might be something Crow can help us with, especially in the short term that we have, like 2 weeks. He's real good at this. I'm not sure what all we would think about presenting right now, being that we're still so new, but I do think the Open Source Summit could benefit, at least OpenSSF Day could benefit from hearing from this group, especially since DE&I gets talked about at the summit in real time.
Yeah.
So like I think last year it was talked about. I think it would be apropos for us to present something to show that we're doing some good, Crow.
I would suggest 2 proposals from this group. The first would be, we're the DE&I subcommittee. This is what we're about, and this would be more for OpenSSF Day. Talk about, here's our plan for action for the balance of the year. And then I would also suggest for the overall conference, at least one birds of a feather session where we are directly soliciting the conference goers for feedback. What would you benefit from? What type of interest can we get from kind of underserved, underrepresented engineers in this space? Maybe that, I don't know how much academics come to these things, but again, we would try to kind of cast as broad a net as we can. We're looking for information, feedback on what people would like to see out of these programs, and then potentially start to deputize some people, some folks that show up. Hey, I'm really glad you all showed up for this topic. Would you be interested in helping us write a quick guide on how to do a Git commit? Would you be interested in participating in our mentorship program? Or, does your company offer any kind of internships? So to kind of use that as a recruitment session as well. So I would do the one, like a general kind of what we are for OpenSSF Day, and then at least one kind of BOF trying to get data, but also recruits.
Okay. Max dropped in the chat that there might have been some data that OpenSSF collected around DEI and the NIST response last year. Do you know anything about that, Crow?
I saw a research paper they did.
Yeah, I didn't. I don't have it handy. I've got a bunch of other open source reports open, but not that particular one. But yeah, they do a job report every year. So that would be, I think, potentially useful information.
Gotcha. And for the birds of a feather, that's not like a CFP. Is that like just done on the day off? Oh, you're on mute? You're on mute, Crow. Hey, Crow, you're on mute.
Those are the easiest call for papers. You kind of write, we're going to do a birds of a feather, and we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z, and we're looking for these types of people to show up. So those are super easy. You have to do like zero prep. You just kind of walk in and you have a great conversation if it's a good topic. So yeah, I have submitted many conference presentations in my life. I'm glad to help this group massage it and get it to a good place. Glad to support however this group wants to move forward.
Okay.
I think the person to reach out to about like Linux Foundation data on DE&I is Hillary Carter. I don't know if anyone else here knows her, but she's phenomenal, and she's the head of research for the whole Linux Foundation, and could hopefully pump us all full of data.
Okay, thanks, Jay. Jay, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, what does the group think about even like a future? This is something Christine and I talked about last year. Something futuristic where we could even, we're not going to make it happen for this conference, but maybe in subsequent conferences, even finding our way through the mentorship program or whatever we build there, being able to get some of these students out to the conference, right? They're funding for that. I'm not sure what that looks like. But getting these students out to the conference, getting them actually, getting them actually around maintainers, around developers, around having those conversations. I mean, Christina and I talked about that. That right there, I'm not even gonna lie. I mean, that's a goal, but also a dream. That's something I would love to see that you don't see ever. We could be the first group. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, where I say broader OpenSSF and then higher level LF. If we can make that happen, getting a group of students or just out into the conference, right? I don't know what that looks like funding wise. I think that's the dragon that we're going to need to slay there, but that's something futuristic that we can even think about too, as we consider what we're doing here at program wise for this subcommittee.
Yeah, meet and maintain a session, as Crope says, that would be really excellent. And even at Open Source North America Summit, and they have like security conference, some of those days, it would be really good for folks to kind of get a sense of like what's going on in there and learn real time. And I think that would be a great goal. Crope?
At least with the security conference that I'm involved with here in Ohio, they do carve-offs for students, both high school as well as college. So we've arranged with the conference promoters to provide so many tickets so students can come at no charge. So we potentially could ask for something like that, and then figure out, the big cost is going to be travel. But if it's a virtual conference, those are even easier and more likely to happen if we can get somebody a virtual invite. But I'd prefer the in-person contact. I think it's much more impactful for a young person to have that direct one-on-one contact and walk away with, you used to get somebody's business card, but today the kids don't do that.
I guess it's LinkedIn or something. I know the Linux Foundation does really, really discounted tickets for full-time students, people in academic settings, like 10% of the price or something like that. So I think that side of it's pretty doable, right? We could easily pitch all of our employers, hey, you're paying for my ticket, like pay 50% more and I can bring 5 students with me, right? That would be the kind of thing you can put on like a corporate credit card, I think the challenge will be getting them to, Vancouver for 3 days. That's suddenly where the bill comes in at, 4 figures. And I do wonder if you can get more reach by doing virtual attendance. Just because for the price of one person's flight, you could bring 100 people virtually.
Yeah.
Should we target that as a long-term 90? At least I have some game plan by 90 days.
Yeah, that would be good. Like a game plan, whether we're going to do like virtually have 100 people or in person, a couple of people, however we want to figure it out. Because even if you do it virtually, it might be also interesting to have like an experience that might be like just for them, for those folks. So even if it feels like it's a virtually, and then somehow connect them so they feel like a community.
We can have a special session for them too, like the meet the
Exactly.
maintainers, and we can just have a special session for them.
Exactly. Any other kind of like the bullet points? I don't know if we got to Jay's 3 bullet points, 30, 60, 90 days.
We got 2 for long-term, 1 for 30.
I think one thing that would be pretty, and it could be like a short 30 days, just even like identifying sort of like the partners, the potential partners, communities and organizations that could come alongside us in these end-to-end sort of journey that we're thinking of. There's going to be folks who can help with the outreach. There's going to be folks who can help with the mentorship, like with the soft skills and the interview prep and all of those different things. I think there are folks out there who can do some of these, and I think that could be something we could target short term as well. And I know there's a list starting, but that list could actually be expanded. Kind of learning from what was done in the education SIG when we had like that matrix where we had what are the different things that are needed, some sort of like matrix for what might be needed in some of these areas could be a useful like project. Crow?
Selfishly, I wouldn't mind a short or a midterm item to be, we get feedback back into the plan around our desired activities.
Okay.
Get that information in there as PRs, we can get the plan adjusted sooner rather than later. And then maybe for midterm, another goal could be we actually get girls who code participating in this call, or whatever other
Oh, yeah.
organizations,
like that.
to get some of these extra organizations aware of and engage with this effort.
Yeah, yeah. So short term, make it into the education plan, like the 30-day, and then midterm, just try to kind of get more folks represented into this call. Yeah.
Can I suggest for the long term something like, or even the midterm actually, to put together like a roadmap for the year with some like projects and outcomes, because conscious of the funding cycles of this kind of initiative, we probably, if we want to do something in Q4, we probably need to start asking for buy-in, approval, funding, by the end of Q1, right? And that's me being very optimistic about funding cycles.
Mhm.
So we could put together like, 2 or 3 projects that we want to achieve by the end of the year that will really drive some outcomes and allow us to get, the millions of dollars in that we'll need for 2024. I think that would be awesome.
And next, man, that might be a great list you can help put together. Nice little. I mean, I'm feeling in a very generous mood today with handing out tasks.
You're in delegation mode.
Jay, if everyone does one task, we're gonna have 10 things done by the end of the
You know
week.
what? As old to Crow, I learned very well, very quick, and very fast. This is a Crow technique I've watched him use. So that's all I'm learning.
Agreed.
I'm very happy to take that action. I've also typed a couple of even longer term like end goals in here, which is where I've put get people from URGs contributing to key open source projects, URGs into jobs as junior AppSec, into junior AppSec jobs. I don't know if we want to have some goals like that, because then suddenly we can justify why we want tickets to a conference, right? It's not so that everyone can have fun, it's because we think that's a key step to somebody getting a job, meeting a maintainer, contributing to a project, building that portfolio. I don't know if there are any other thoughts on what those like outcomes, those end goals could look like.
You know what, man? Well, I mean, look, throw darts at the dartboard, right? The whole idea of brainstorming. Let's throw some projects on a piece of paper, and then let's go through them. What makes sense? What's realistic? What can be done today? What takes a little bit longer, right? The difficult do immediately, the impossible may take a little longer, and miracles by appointment only. Like we could take that approach all day. And for those of you who heard that just now and said that was some fly stuff, go ahead and ask me about it. Go ahead and put it in your repertoire of things you like to say. It's yours. It's yours.
Miracles by appointment only. Another thing that's probably I like, Max, what you said about like the cycles and all, because actually within a lot of like the different companies, I know within ours is that there are some employee resource groups that are very much interested in D&I and different groups that we could engage with internally that can actually help amplify some of the work we're doing, and just getting some of those stakeholders either to these meetings or even just getting their mind share and all. I think it'd be like a good goal for those who actually belong to corporates, where they can actually touch into those groups and those organizations. These tend to be like employee resource groups and those types of organizations.
I think another, it'd probably be a short midterm, just because we need some marketing. We need a way to actually reach out to our audience besides through these communities. Maybe something to kind of share. I know Linux Foundation does some stuff, but if we can combine like, everyone likes their TikToks, right? Or they like those quick little videos. If we can combine some kind of like video showing about the different projects and, kind of driving that attention the way that folks get attention to things nowadays.
Yeah.
I think that could benefit in getting more folks on it too. And we can use that when we reach out to communities. It's like, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. And, you know, we need your help to kind of drive folks through and whatnot.
I like that. Yeah. Max?
I've got another idea on there, which is a little bit I don't know, actively aggressive, which is like a lot of companies have employee resource groups, right, for different underrepresented groups, and that's great. But I think we could put forward a not employed resource group, right, for people who are from underrepresented groups who want to get a job in you know, in this space, and don't have the support and the career development and the personal development stuff that comes from those ERGs, you know, once people cross the threshold into corporate life.
So would these resource or not employed resource groups are external, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I mean, they're typically like regular meetings, access to mentorship, you know, how-to guides, you know, cheat sheets for getting this and that, networking events, like job boards, like all those sorts of things. And often like within companies, people will group together and, you know, set that up in some kind of sponsored way. But I think there is a lack of those sorts of community and sharing activities with people who are looking for work, who come from a common background. There's loads of writing out there about like how to run a good ERG. I think we could think about, you know, that could be something that you know, we could look for like funding for, right? It would be a long-term group and space where people who think, hey, how can I be part of, how could I be an application security engineer? And it just being a, you know, a safe, supportive environment for that. I'll try and find an example of like an effective one or a good framework for an ERG.
Oh, that'd be great. And Crope said a periodic webinar, town hall to get speakers and topics, and then promote that to this not employed new group.
Yeah, like the OpenSSF, definitely we could schedule some type of, you know, town hall. We need to find some interesting speakers and topics to entice the viewers to come.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think the foundation definitely could help us even with that. That would be very simple to do. It's just a matter of getting speakers and content and having that back catalog to encourage people to continue to participate.
Okay. I know we got a couple of minutes left, but I think this has been like a really like lots of ideas coming. And the things I like about some of the ideas is that they are attainable. And thanks, Jay, for kind of time bounding us into this 30-90 so we can actually like get going. So we've got some action items that we have between now and the next meeting and folks that we've delegated to. So we're looking forward to seeing this. This is going to be really exciting. I'm really excited about this. Anything else? Any last closing thoughts? All right. If not, check back in 2 weeks and let's hope you can get some of the excitement work going, and see you. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Thanks, bye.
Guys, thank you all very much.